Hello there, everybody. This is Rob, the baseball time traveler. Today we're going to travel back to 1933. I'm recording this at the end of All-Star Week in 2025, so I thought it'd be appropriate to take a close look at the 1933 game, which was the very first All-Star game, which was arranged during the Depression, and actually was a brainchild of a Chicago sports writer who proposed it to the American League president, and it caught on. And the idea was to have the best players in the game play once a year during the midsummer time. And this was to raise money initially for charities. So I was fortunate this week to be able to get an actual Sporting News edition. This is not a copy, this is the real deal. And I have to be very careful with it because it's very fragile. But I wanted to just do a quick overview. I'm not going to really review the game in any great detail, but I did want to show you some cards. A lot of players there were depicted, and 20 of the 36 players in this game were later inducted into the Hall of Fame, as well as the managers Connie Mack and John McGraw, and I think a couple of the umpires as well. So this was a star-studded field. The 1934 game the following year was actually probably one of the more famous All-Star games, because that was the game that Carl Hubble struck out 5 future Hall of Famers in a row. And I'll be doing a video on that later this year. So let's get started with the review of the game. I've got some team photos here. This is the American League. They have doffed their caps, looking a little less formal. You'll notice that they're all wearing their home uniforms. And unlike that, the National League, a little more formal photograph, they were wearing their gray away jerseys, National League and NL on the caps. And here's a photograph pre-game of 3 people who later became Hall of Famers and donning their home uniforms. Babe Ruth, Al Simmons in the middle there, and Earl Averill of the Cleveland Indians chatting it up before they head out to play the game. All right, so what I'm going to do is just kind of go across the front of the paper there and take a look at some of the players. I've got some cards, I've got some photographs, other things depicting these players. First up is Joe Cronin, who is the manager player, shortstop for the Washington Senators in this game. This photograph has him in his Boston uniform, but in this game he played as a manager, shortstop for the Washington Senators. Next is outfielder Earl Averill of the Cleveland Indians. And we have Sam West of the Washington Senators. He was playing for the St. Louis Browns in this particular game and was later traded to the Senators, and he added a distinction of being one of the players on the field for Lou Gehrig's last game in 1939. Next, speaking of Lou Gehrig, one of his best friends, Hall of Fame catcher Bill Dickey. Now, I don't happen to have any playing days cards of Lou Gehrig just yet. That's on my bucket list, if you will, but I do have the playing days Who's Who in Baseball with Lou on the cover, so that helps me out at this point. All right, next, second baseman Charlie Gehringer has one of the most outstanding autographs in the hobby. So if you haven't picked up a Charlie Gehringer autograph, you ought to do so. You can actually read his name, unlike most of the scribble that you get these days from modern players. Sorry about that. Okay, now we have Lefty Gomez, pitcher for the New York Yankees. Never lost a World Series game, and actually was named the starting pitcher for this game. Next, Chicago White Sox, Jimmy Dykes. Now we have the 1935 Edwards Ringer and Big copy of the Babe Ruth. This was from a set from England, and it's showing Babe as a representative of baseball in the USA. I have the 1929 Churchman's card of this same artistic rendering, and it's quite a thrill to have two Babe Ruth cards. Next is Oral Hildebrand. He was playing for the Cleveland Indians at this point. I have his 1940 play ball card here because I'll be doing a video on the 1939 series, and Oral was a key pitcher for the Yankees during that 39 series. Next is Dick Bartell. He was now playing for the Philadelphia Athletics and was later traded to the New York Giants. And I'll be doing a couple of videos on the Giants and Yankees World Series games in 1936 and 37. And here's Dick Bartell in his Giants uniform. Next, we have another New York Giant, Al Schumacher, who saw some time in this particular game, was one of the relief pitchers. The Fordham Flash, Frankie Frisch, started at second base. And this is kind of a special card for me in the sense that my dad was a Fordham undergrad and law school graduate, and he was a big New York Giants fan along with my grandfather, and they lived in the Bronx, and my grandfather especially was a Giants fan. I think my father eventually became a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. I never really got a clear explanation why that happened, but he did nonetheless. All right, so we got future Hall of Fame outfielder Chuck Klein, who was playing for the Philadelphia Phillies at this point. He's in his 1939 Pirates uniform. That was the only year he played for the Pirates. And here's an action photo of Chuck wearing his National League gear. Here's the starting pitcher for the National League. It's kind of interesting in the article, the managers originally had named Lefty Grove and Carl Hubble as the starting pitchers, but on the day of the game they changed their mind. Started Lefty Gomez and Bill Hallahan, who were both left-handers as well. And as it turned out, Lefty Grove and Carl Hubble finished the last 3 innings for each of their respective teams. Here's Lonnie Warneke, who was playing for the Chicago Cubs at this point. He was a middle reliever, if you will, and was a fine pitcher in his own right. Starting catcher for the National League Chicago Cubs, Gabby Hartnett, future Hall of Famer. And I was just speaking about a couple of the big Giants. Here's King Carl Hubble, who came to infamy, famous infamy, whatever it is. He struck out 5 future Hall of Famers in the 1934 game: Ruth, Gehrig, Fox, Simmons, and Cronin. And I'll be doing a video on King Carl and his exploits in the 34 World Series down the road. Here's another New York Giant, Hall of Famer Bill Terry, the last one to hit 400 in the National League. And here's a photograph that appears to be the model for the artistic rendering in the Diamond Stars card. Here's Wally Berger, playing for the Cincinnati Reds in 1939. And that's why I have his card. I'll be doing a series review of 1939. And Wally Berger was a key player in that series. The Reds actually won the 1940 World Series after having lost to the Yankees in 1939. And Wally, as it turns out, was the only non-Hall of Famer to play in the 1934 All-Star Game as a starter. All other of the 17 starters were future Hall of Famers. And the last card is going to be Hall of Famer Rick Farrell, catcher for the Washington Senators. His brother Wes was a fine pitcher himself in the late 20s and early 30s, won 4 straight seasons of 20 games. And I don't have a Wes Farrell card. There are 2 other Hall of Famers who were not selected for this team, and but played in the 34 game. And I just want to show you the cards. Kai Kyler, and one of my all-time favorites, and I know my dad's one of his all-time favorites, Milot. And to wrap it up here, got one modern card, if you will, reviewing the game, the 1933 All-Star game. And I found the photograph. That's a matchup here of Babe crossing the plate. He ended up hitting what would be the ultimately the winning run. The American League won 4-2, and he's being congratulated by Chicago White Sox bat boy Jack McBride, and Lou Gehrig is following him in the batting order there. So that was quite a thrill. Have Babe be the first one to hit a home run in the inaugural All-Star game, and as we know, that ended up being a yearly classic, and we always look forward to some great All-Star play. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. See you next time.